100 guests watched Elena Brooks carry the final platter to the table. The room was glowing. Soft gold light from the chandeliers spilled across white linen and polished glass. Laughter floated in the air. Music played low. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Elena moved carefully, slow, steady. Her hands were warm from the kitchen, her apron still tied around her waist. 3 days. 72 hours. That was how long she had been cooking, marinating, stirring, baking, building this night piece by piece while the rest of the house slept. She reached the table. Applause broke out, loud, sudden. Someone whistled from the back. A woman leaned forward and whispered, "She's incredible." Heads nodded, smiles spread. Elena didn't look up. At the head of the table, Richard Brooks raised his glass, smiling, proud, like a man who owned everything in the room. He didn't look at her. She placed the platter down, wiped her hands on her apron, reached for the emptier chair at the end of the table, and then a hand grabbed her wrist. Hard, sharp, Richard. He didn't smile now. His grip tightened. He pulled her sideways, fast, dragging her away from the table, toward the kitchen door. "Servants don't sit with guests," he said, low but clear. The room stopped. Forks froze midair. Glasses hovered near lips. No one moved. No one spoke. Silence. Then the door opened. Vanessa Cole walked in. Slow, smooth. Her dress clung perfectly. Her hair felt just right. She didn't look at Elena. She didn't need to. She walked straight to the chair Elena had just reached for and sat down like she belonged there. Richard's mother leaned over, adjusted Vanessa's napkin, smiled. No one said a word. Elena stood in the doorway, hands still damp, heart still. She looked at the table, at the woman in her seat, at the man who erased her, at the room that chose silence. And then she smiled, not broken, not weak, because across the room on the gift table sat Richard's leather briefcase. And inside it was the truth he never expected her to find. The chandeliers hung low over the Langford Estate ballroom, dripping warm gold light across every table. Everything was arranged. Perfect, controlled. White linen stretched smooth without a wrinkle. Glassware lined up in exact rows. 100 place settings, each one identical, each one approved. The music floated softly from the corner, just loud enough to fill the silence, never loud enough to disturb it. This night had been planned for months. Richard Brooks planned everything. The venue, the guest list, the seating chart, the music, even the timing of the speeches. Every detail passed through his hands first. Every decision carried his approval. Everything except the food. That belonged to Elena. It had always belonged to Elena. In the kitchen, the air had been thick for days. Heat, steam, spice, 72 hours without rest, marinades soaking deep into meat, pots simmering low and slow, care measured not in minutes but in feeling, collard greens bubbling in smoked broth, short ribs cooked until the bone gave up without a fight, cornbread made from a recipe older than the house itself, written in faded ink and kept close like a secret, mac and cheese baked until the top turned golden and crisp, like something too perfect to touch, and the cake. 3 layers, deep red, soft as breath, frosted by hand in the early morning when the world was still asleep and only Elena was awake, standing under a single dim light, finishing what no one else could see. Upstairs, the guests arrived in silken suits. Downstairs, Elena built the night with her hands. No applause, no spotlight, just work, just silence. And when the doors opened, when the music rose, when the room filled with laughter and polished voices, everything looked effortless, like it had always been this way, like it had simply appeared, like magic. But magic always has a cost. And tonight, Elena had already paid it. Elena's fingers were still curled around the back of the chair when everything changed. 1 second, she was about to sit. The next, she was being pulled away, fast, sharp. Her body shifted sideways before her mind could catch up. The chair scraped lightly against the floor. The sound was small, but in that moment, it felt loud enough to echo. Richard's hand stayed tight around her wrist. Not gentle. Never gentle. Servants don't sit with guests. The words didn't rise. They dropped, heavy, controlled, meant to be heard. And they were. The first table heard, then the second, then the third. Silence spread across the room like something breaking under glass. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. A woman at the far table lifted her napkin slowly, pressing it against her lips like she needed to hide her reaction. Someone near the bar shifted in their seat, eyes lowering, pretending the table in front of them was suddenly very interesting. The music didn't stop right away. It tried to continue. One last note hung in the air, then faded, gone. Elena didn't pull away. She didn't fight. Her arm stayed where he held it. Her body turned just slightly, caught between the table and the door. Close enough to see everything, too close to miss anything. Then the front doors opened. Vanessa Cole stepped in. Slow steps. Measured. Certain. Her heels clicked softly against the floor. Her dress fit like it had been chosen for this exact moment. Her eyes moved across the room, not searching, not asking, just claiming. She passed the tables without stopping. Her fingers brushed the back of a chair as she moved forward, like she had done it before, like she had rehearsed it. Then she reached the main table. The chair. Elena's chair. She pulled it out, sat down, crossed her legs, placed her clutch on the table, and looked around the room with a small, easy smile. Permission wasn't needed. It was assumed. 2 seats down, Margaret Brooks leaned forward. She didn't hesitate. She adjusted the napkin beside Vanessa's plate, smoothing the fabric with careful hands. "You look lovely tonight, sweetheart." Her voice was warm, too warm. The room held its breath. 100 people. Not one stood. Not one spoke. Not one looked toward the kitchen door, where Elena was still standing, still wearing her apron, still holding the weight of a seat that was no longer hers. Elena stood at the kitchen doorway and didn't move, not a step. Not a breath. The room stretched out in front of her like a painting she no longer belonged to. Faces she knew. People she had fed. People who had laughed in her home, eaten her food, praised her hands. Now silent, now still, she looked at the table. At Richard, standing tall, adjusting his sleeve like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just erased her in front of 100 witnesses. She looked at Vanessa, sitting in her seat, comfortable, relaxed. A small smile resting on her lips like it had always been there. She looked at Margaret, the woman who had watched her for years, measured her, corrected her, smiled with teeth but never with warmth. Now leaning toward another woman, fixing her place, welcoming her, like this moment had been waiting, like this moment had been planned. Elena's hands were still damp. She rubbed her fingers together slowly, felt the warmth fade, felt the air cool against her skin. No one came to her. No one said her name. No one asked if she was okay. The room had made its choice, and then her eyes moved across the polished floor, past the tables, past the laughter trying to come back in broken pieces, to the gift table. There, between wrapped boxes and a bottle of amber glass, Richard's briefcase, black leather, clean, perfect, his initials pressed in gold like a signature stamped on everything he owned. He carried it everywhere, guarded it like it held his life, locked it every night, never let it out of his sight, almost never. Elena's gaze stayed on it, still, steady, and slowly something changed. Not in the room, in her. The air around her didn't shift. The silence didn't break, the music didn't return. But inside, something settled. Her shoulders eased, her breathing slowed. And then she smiled, soft, quiet, certain. Not the smile of a woman who had just been humiliated, not the smile of someone broken. This was different. This was the smile of someone who already knew the ending. Because inside that briefcase, hidden beneath paper and leather and lies, was everything. Everything he thought she would never see. Everything he believed she would never understand. Everything that was about to destroy him. Elena turned her head slightly, looked back at the room one more time. At the man who thought he had won. At the woman sitting in her place. At the silence that thought it was power. And her smile didn't fade. It deepened. Just a little. Because tonight wasn't over. Not even close. 5 years earlier, Elena Brooks was standing behind a folding table at Mount Calvary Church, holding a ladle in one hand and a paper bowl in the other. The air smelled like sugar and cinnamon. Laughter drifted across the yard. Children ran past her table, chasing each other with sticky fingers and loud voices. Next, she said softly. A man stepped forward. Clean suit, polished shoes, eyes that noticed everything. He took the bowl from her, looked down at it, then back at her. "Who made this?" he asked. Elena smiled, a little unsure. "I did." He didn't smile back. "Then whoever you are," he said slowly, "you should be taken seriously." The words hung there. Strange, unexpected. She laughed. Light, quick, like it didn't matter. He didn't. The next Sunday he came back, same time, same table. He stood a little closer this time, stayed a little longer, asked her questions that had nothing to do with food. "What's your name?" "Elena." He repeated it, quietly, like he was testing how it felt. The third Sunday, he didn't wait in line. He walked straight to her table. "Have you ever thought about doing more with this?" he asked, gesturing to the tray of fresh cobbler. Elena wiped her hands on a towel. "It's just food." He shook his head. "No, it's not just food." He looked at her then, really looked. "You have the kind of hands that build something real." The words landed deeper this time. Somewhere inside her, something stirred, something that had been quiet for a long time, something that wanted to believe him. 7 months later, they were standing together in a small church. No grand ballroom, no 100 guests, just a few voices, a few smiles, a promise that felt bigger than the room could hold. Richard held her hands, warm, steady. "I choose you," he said, and Elena believed him. She believed in the way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he made her feel seen. After the ceremony, they walked out into the sunlight together. No music, no spotlight, just two people stepping into something new, something simple, something real. Or at least that's what it felt like back then. The apartment on Larkin Street was small, too small for two people to move at the same time. The window stuck every morning, the paint near the sink peeled just a little, and the kitchen, narrow, tight, barely enough space for one body to turn. But Elena stood there every night like it was something sacred. Light low, stove warm, hands moving. She cooked like the walls were watching, like every meal mattered. Richard would come home late, tie loose, phone still in his hand. "Dinner ready?" he would ask. Elena would nod, always nod. Plate set, food hot, table clean, no complaints, no delay. Some nights he brought people with him. No warning, no call, just the sound of the door opening and voices behind him. "Hope you don't mind," he would say, already stepping inside. Elena never said no. She turned back to the kitchen, moved faster, cut quicker, built a full meal out of whatever she had. 3 courses, sometimes more. Guests would laugh, talk, praise. "This is incredible." "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Richard would smile, proud, but not at her, at the moment, at the deal, at the room bending toward him. Elena stayed in the background, quiet, watching, listening, learning. When Richard started his business, she didn't ask questions. She just stepped in, numbers, files, contracts. She balanced everything down to the last dollar, organized every client, fixed mistakes before they became problems. At night, she cooked. During the day, she built his system, and slowly, things changed. Bigger clients, bigger deals, new suits, new watches, a new car. Then another. The apartment became a house. The house became something else. Wider, brighter, louder, more rooms, more space, less warmth. Richard moved differently now, spoke faster, smiled sharper. People listened when he walked into a room. And every time a deal closed, every time a handshake turned into money, Elena was there, just not seen, just not named. She stood in the kitchen while his world expanded, hands steady, back straight, invisible. And somewhere between the narrow kitchen on Larkin Street and the wide halls of that new house, something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to change everything. The briefcase was the first thing that felt wrong. It appeared quietly, no announcement, no explanation. Just there one morning, resting on the edge of the kitchen counter like it had always belonged. Black leather, smooth, perfect, his initials pressed in gold. Richard picked it up like it mattered, like it meant something. At first, Elena didn't think much of it. Just work, just business, that's what he said. But then he started carrying it everywhere, to meetings, to the car, to the bedroom. Even to the table sometimes, setting it down beside his plate like a silent guest. He never left it alone, never, and at night he locked it. 3 clicks, soft, precise, every time. Elena noticed, of course she noticed everything. One morning she handed him his coffee, warm, fresh, the way he liked it. "What's in the case?" she asked, casual, light. Richard didn't look at her. "It's business, Elena," he said. A pause. "You wouldn't understand." The words didn't shout. They cut, clean, quiet. Something shifted, small, but real. After that, the changes came slowly. Too small to argue, too clear to ignore. A receipt in his jacket pocket from a restaurant she had never been to. Dinner for 2. Charged to a card she didn't recognize. A phone that buzzed late at night. Once, twice, then silence before the 3rd ring. A shirt collar that smelled different. Sharper, sweeter. Not hers, not familiar. Elena didn't ask. She didn't accuse. She didn't react. She watched. She collected. Each detail placed carefully in her mind, like ingredients measured without looking. Exact. Precise. Unforgotten. Richard laughed more now, but not with her. Smiled more, but not at her. He moved through the house like it belonged to him alone. Like everything inside it had a purpose. Except her. Elena stood in the kitchen one evening, hands resting on the counter, the sound of his voice drifting from the other room. Soft, warm, almost gentle. She couldn't hear the words, but she heard the tone, and that was enough. She closed her eyes just for a second, then opened them again. Still, quiet, because something had changed, and she was the only one in the house who knew it. Margaret Brooks started visiting more often. At first, it felt normal. A phone call, a short visit, a polite smile at the door. But then it became every week. Same time, same perfume, same quiet inspection of everything Elena touched. She walked through the house like she was measuring it, like she was measuring her. "Elena, sweetheart," she said one afternoon, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her cook. That word, sweetheart. Soft, sharp. "You should really get your hair done before Richard's next dinner." Elena didn't turn around. Her hands kept moving, knife steady, rhythm unchanged. "First impressions matter," Margaret continued, stepping closer. "A man like Richard, he's moving in different circles now." A pause. "I'm sure you understand." Elena nodded once, slow. Margaret smiled, not warm, never warm. "You're a wonderful cook," she said, glancing at the pot on the stove. "Truly, but a wife is more than a kitchen." The words settled into the room, heavy, designed to stay. Elena didn't answer. She stirred the pot, tasted the sauce, added a pinch of salt. Exact, measured, like nothing had touched her. But she heard everything, every word, every tone. Every small correction wrapped in kindness that wasn't kind. The visits didn't stop. They grew. Longer conversations, sharper observations. Margaret adjusted things when Elena wasn't looking, moved a plate, replaced a centerpiece, changed the order of the table settings. Small things, but not small. "You'll learn," Margaret said once, smoothing a wrinkle from a tablecloth Elena had just placed. Another time, "Elena, you should speak a little less at dinner. Let Richard lead. It's better that way." Elena stood still, hands at her sides, listening, storing, always storing. The drawer in her mind was filling. Receipts, late calls, unknown scents, and now words, layer after layer, quiet, careful, waiting. One evening, Margaret stood by the door, preparing to leave. She turned back, looked Elena up and down, a slow glance, thoughtful, evaluating. Then she smiled. "You're doing your best," she said softly, a pause. "But sometimes your best just isn't enough." The door closed behind her, click. Elena stood alone in the house, silent, still. Her reflection caught faintly in the window glass. She looked at it, long, unmoving, then turned away. Because she didn't need to defend herself. She didn't need to argue. She didn't need to prove anything. Not yet. Not while the drawer was still open and filling. The number was right there. Small, clear, unhidden. 0, 9, 1, 4. Elena stopped in the hallway, her hands still resting on the wall as she passed. The light from the ceiling hit the briefcase just enough. The metal dial caught it, reflected it, held it. Richard was asleep on the couch, one arm across his chest, mouth slightly open, breathing slow, easy, careless. The briefcase sat on the floor beside him. Unlocked, no, not unlocked, just exposed. The dial faced up, waiting. Elena looked at it, then at him. then back at it. 0914. September 14th, their wedding anniversary. Of course it was. She didn't smile. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach for it, not yet. Instead, she stood there, still, memorizing. The numbers settled into her mind the same way everything else did. Quiet, precise, permanent. She turned away, walked to the kitchen, turned off the lights one by one. The house dimmed slowly, room after room, like something fading. But that wasn't the only thing changing. Around that same time, a name began to appear. At first, just once. Then again. Vanessa handled that file. Vanessa found a better deal. Vanessa has a sharp eye. Richard said the name easily, comfortably, like it belonged in the room, like it had always been there. He smiled when he said it. A different smile. Not the one he used at dinner, not the one he used with clients. Softer, warmer, alive. One evening, he stood by the counter, flipping through papers. Vanessa reminds me of someone I used to know, he said casually. He looked up at Elena, just for a second. Waiting. Elena didn't respond, didn't ask, didn't react. She poured his coffee, set it down in front of him. Black, no sugar, exactly the way he liked it. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. But inside, the drawer shifted, made space, because now it wasn't just receipts, not just silence, not just distance. It had a name. Vanessa, clear, sharp, unmistakable. Richard took a sip of his coffee, didn't notice the way Elena watched him, didn't notice the stillness in her eyes, didn't notice anything at all, because he had already stopped looking at her. And that was his mistake. The house was quiet that night. Too quiet. Richard had left that morning, suitcase in hand, voice smooth, eyes already somewhere else. Atlanta, he said. Investor meetings. Back in a few days. Elena nodded. Of course she did. Now the house held only silence. No footsteps, no phone calls drifting from another room, no voice that wasn't hers. Just the clock. Tick, tick, tick. She stood in his office doorway. The briefcase sat on his chair, exactly where he had left it, facing up, waiting. Elena stepped inside, slow, careful. Her fingers hovered over the lock for a moment. Then she turned the dial. 0914. Click. The sound was small, but it changed everything. She opened it. Inside, folders, clean, ordered, controlled. Property listings stacked neatly. A calculator tucked to the side. Everything looked normal until it didn't. A manila envelope, no label, no name, just there. Elena picked it up. Her hands didn't shake. She opened it. Paper slid out. One page. Then another. Then another. Her eyes moved across the lines. Slow at first. Then faster. Then still. Property transfer documents. 3 of them. Addresses she knew. Buildings she had walked through herself. Measured. Planned. Fixed places she helped build. Each one signed. Stamped. Transferred. Not to them. Not to their names. To something else. A company. Teague Marshall Holdings. Elena read it again. The name didn't change. She turned the page. Signature. Richard Brooks. And beneath it, another name. Vanessa Cole. Clear, sharp, permanent. Elena didn't breathe, not for a second. She kept reading. Dates. Numbers. Legal lines. Everything precise. Everything planned. Everything done without her. Her finger traced the edge of the paper. Felt the raised seal of the notary press against her skin. Real. All of it real. Then, another document. Thicker, denser. She unfolded it. A prenuptial amendment. Prepared. Unsigned. Waiting. Her eyes moved slowly now, carefully, each word heavier than the last. If signed, she would lose everything. Every property, every share, every piece she helped build. Gone. Just like that. Elena lowered the paper slightly. The room didn't move. The walls didn't shift. Nothing changed, except her, because now she knew. Not pieces, not hints, the whole truth, complete, clear, and cold. Elena closed the briefcase exactly the way she found it. Same angle, same position, same silence. She wiped the surface once with her sleeve, light, careful, no trace. Then she sat down in Richard's chair and didn't move. Minutes passed, then more. The house stayed quiet. The clock kept ticking. The air didn't change. But inside her, something was building. Not anger, not grief. Something colder, something structured, like pieces locking into place. When she finally stood up, her face was calm, too calm. She walked out of the office, picked up her phone, and dialed one number. It rang once, twice, A voice answered. Faye Mitchell's office. Elena didn't hesitate. I need to speak with someone about property transfer filings under the names Richard Brooks and Vanessa Cole. A pause. Then, hold, please. The call lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes that changed everything. When she hung up, she stood still for a moment, phone still in her hand. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen. Unfamiliar, sharper. She moved the next morning, downtown. A quiet office with glass walls and clean lines. Faye Mitchell sat behind her desk, reading glasses resting low on her nose, eyes moving across the documents Elena had photographed the night before. Page after page, careful, precise. The room felt tight, focused. When the last page was set down, Faye leaned back slightly. These transfers, she said slowly, require spousal consent. She tapped the paper once. I don't see your signature anywhere. Elena shook her head. No. Faye nodded. That's because it isn't there. A pause. Then that makes every single one of these filings legally defective. The words settled, heavy, real. They can be challenged, Faye continued, frozen versed. Elena listened, still. Do you want me to file now? The attorney asked. Elena looked at the documents, at the names, at the truth laid out in ink. Then she shook her head. No. Faye watched her carefully. Why not? Elena's voice was quiet, steady. Because I need him to believe everything is normal for a little while longer. The room went still. Faye leaned back, studying her, not questioning, understanding. Tell me what you're planning, she said. Elena didn't smile, not yet, but something in her eyes had already decided. This wasn't just a response, this was a plan, and it had already begun. Elena planned the party like she was building something no one else could see. Every detail had a place. Every name had a reason. She sat at the dining table late at night, pen moving slowly across the guest list. The house was quiet. Only the soft scratch of ink and the low hum of the refrigerator filled the space. 100 guests, not random, not careless, chosen. Richard glanced at the list once, distracted, already on his phone. Looks fine, he said. He didn't read it. He never did. Elena kept writing. Pastor Daniel Green, a man whose words could shift an entire room without raising his voice. Marcus Reed, Andrew Collins, Richard's strongest business partners. Men who watched everything, remembered everything. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, head of the neighborhood association, a woman who knew every story before it was spoken out loud. Each name placed carefully, like pieces on a board. Then one more, not written, not printed, not visible. A guest who wouldn't appear on the list. A guest who would arrive quietly, wait silently, and step forward only when the moment came. Elena folded the paper, set it down, done. Over the next 2 months, she moved through the house like nothing had changed. She cooked, she cleaned, she smiled when spoken to. She kissed Richard on the cheek when he left. She poured his coffee every morning. Black, no sugar, exactly the same. He didn't notice the difference. He didn't see the stillness in her eyes. He didn't hear the shift in her voice. He didn't see anything because he wasn't looking. He had become careless, looser, louder. He took calls in the open now, laughed in the living room, spoke Vanessa's name without lowering his voice. One evening, Elena stood in the hallway, a dish towel folded in her hands. Richard's voice drifted from the room ahead. She's so focused on this party, he said, laughing softly. She doesn't see what's right in front of her. A pause, a second voice. Vanessa, faint, clear enough. Will she be there? Richard didn't hesitate. She'll be in the kitchen, where she belongs. Elena stood still, didn't move, didn't breathe. The towel stayed folded in her hands. Perfect, untouched. Then she turned, walked back to the kitchen, rolled out dough with steady hands, pressed, cut, shaped, exact, measured, because the stage was already set, and they had no idea they were standing on it. Elena stepped out of the kitchen and didn't return to the main table. Not to Richard, not to Vanessa, not to the seat that had been taken from her. She walked past the noise, past the soft laughter trying to recover, past the eyes that refused to meet hers. Slow, steady, until she reached a small table near the back wall. 2 chairs, unused, forgotten. She pulled one out and sat down, unfolded the napkin, placed it across her lap, and began to eat. Quiet, precise, like nothing had happened, like everything had. At first, no one noticed. Then, someone did. A woman at table 4 leaned closer to her husband, whispering, eyes flicking toward the back of the room. A man near the bar shifted his chair, turning just slightly. 2 women at another table exchanged a look. Quick, sharp. The music continued. But something was off. Something had tilted. The picture Richard had built didn't feel right anymore. A woman stood up. Clara Hayes. She walked across the room without hesitation, stopped beside Elena's table, leaned down slightly. "That cake," she said softly, "is the best thing I've tasted in 10 years. A pause, and you deserve to eat it wherever you choose." Elena looked up, met her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Clara didn't leave. She pulled out the second chair, sat down. Then another person came, then another, a man holding his plate carefully, like it mattered where he stood. A woman with her glass still in hand. Chairs moved. Wood scraped softly against the floor. Plates shifted. Voices followed, low at first, then stronger. The small table began to fill, grow, expand. What had been empty wasn't anymore. Across the room, Richard noticed, mid-sentence, his eyes moved, tracked the shift, the movement, the quiet migration. His smile stayed, but tightened, just slightly, like something pulling too far. He lifted his glass. "Everyone, I just want to," but the room didn't turn. Not all of it. Some heads stayed where they were. Near Elena, watching her, listening to her, choosing her. Richard lowered the glass slowly. His eyes moved again, this time toward Vanessa. She didn't speak, didn't smile. She was watching too. And for the first time there was doubt. Small, but real. Elena felt it, didn't look up right away, didn't rush. She took another bite, set her fork down gently. Then she looked across the room, met Richard's eyes, held them. 1 second, 2, 3, long enough. And then she looked away, not down, away, like he wasn't worth the next second. And in that moment, the room decided, without words, without permission, where she belonged. Richard stood and tapped his glass with a knife. Clink, clink. The sound cut through the room. Some heads turned, not all. He smiled anyway, smooth, practiced. "I want to thank everyone who made tonight possible," he said, voice steady, filling the space he thought still belonged to him. He named his partners. He praised the venue. He thanked his mother. He thanked Vanessa. He did not say Elena's name, not once. The applause came thin, polite, hollow. And before it could settle, a chair moved. Elena stood, slow, deliberate, like a witness called to the stand. "If I could have a moment," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room quieted. Even the music seemed to step back. Elena walked toward the gift table. Richard's eyes followed her, sharp now, alert. "Nadine," he started, catching himself. "Elena." Too late. She reached the briefcase, lifted, turned the dial 0, 9, 4. Click. The sound echoed clean, final. She opened it. Paper slid into her hands. She held it up. "For 5 years," she said, "I have cooked in this house. I've managed every account, every file, every client dinner you've attended." A pause. "I know these properties." Murmurs. Small, rising. She continued. 3 buildings transferred into Teague Marshall Holdings. Her eyes moved to Vanessa. To a company co-signed by Vanessa Cole. The room tightened. Vanessa didn't move. Didn't breathe. Elena turned another page. "A prenuptial amendment prepared to remove my rights. Scheduled to be presented after tonight." Silence. Heavy. Crushing. "And the apartment downtown," Elena said, voice steady, "funded by a personal loan of $62,000. She turned her head, looked at Margaret, co-signed by Margaret Brooks. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Margaret's hand rose to her chest. Richard stepped forward. "Elena, we can talk about this at home." "No," she said, soft. "Final. We could have a beat 6 months ago." She placed the papers on the table, flat, open, visible. "Every transfer," she continued, "was filed without my legal consent." She looked around the room, met their eyes, one by one. "They are all invalid." The words landed hard, real, and then a woman stood from the back, dark suit, calm face. She stepped forward. "Faye Mitchell's office," she said, placing an envelope in front of Richard. "You've been served." The room froze. Completely. No sound, no movement. Just truth, standing in the light. The room didn't move. Not a breath. Not a sound. Richard stood there with the envelope in his hand, staring at it like it might disappear if he waited long enough. It didn't. Vanessa pushed her chair back. Fast. The legs scraped against the floor, sharp, ugly, real. She grabbed her clutch and walked toward the door. Quick steps, unsteady. No one stopped her. No one spoke. She left the same way she came in, but without the smile. Margaret didn't follow. She stayed in her seat, hands folded, eyes lowered. For the first time, she looked small. Elena watched none of it for long. She had already turned away. Back to her table, back to her seat. She sat down, lifted her glass, took a slow sip. The water was still cold. The room was not. Behind her, Richard tried to speak. His voice came out thin. "We can fix this," no one answered. Not his partners, not his friends, not the room he thought he owned, because they had seen it, all of it, clear, unhidden. And once truth is seen, it doesn't disappear. It stays. The party ended without anyone saying it was over. People left quietly, chairs emptying one by one, conversations gone, laughter gone, everything gone. A week later, the calls began. One partner stepped back, then another. Deals paused, trust gone. Vanessa disappeared, her number disconnected, her name no longer spoken. Margaret called Elena. Once, twice, 3 times. Elena let it ring, every time. 6 months passed. Elena stood in a new kitchen, smaller, brighter. Sunlight poured through the window, soft and warm. No guests, no pressure. Just a table for 12, friends, real ones. Laughter filled the space. Easy, unforced. Her apron hung by the door, clean, pressed, still there. Not as a memory, as proof that she had walked through everything and remained. That evening, she sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sky was deep blue, quiet. A car slowed at the curb, dark, still. Inside, Richard watched, hands on the wheel. Alone, no briefcase, no plan. He looked at the house, at the life that no longer had him in it. Then he drove away, slow, like a man with nowhere left to go. Elena didn't see him. She didn't need to. She was already free. Some people fight with noise. Some fight with fire. Elena waited. And when the truth was ready, she let it speak. And that was enough.